anCnoc. 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 Oh, the C is silent. anCno. The Knockdu distillery is located in the Highlands of Scotland, and it was founded in 1894 by John Morrison after some springs were found on the southern side of the Knock Hill. And you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, so what? Well, water is really hard to move, especially back in the 1800s. It's really heavy. So you want to have your distillery where there's lots of water. Now, it also helps that there's a lot of barley. Specifically, this area is renowned for its barley. And they were in close proximity to peat, as well as the Great North of Scotland Railway. So they were able to move whatever they made. All of these together, great place to put a distillery. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, it's anCnoc, but you keep saying Knockdu. Well, that's true. anCnoc is just what's on the bottle. The Knockdu is the name of the distillery, but a little company named Diageo, who you might have heard of, for those of you that haven't, Diageo is a huge company that owns a ton of different brands. They thought that their distillery, Knockdu, might be a little confusing. They didn't want to have their, Knockdu being confused for Knockdu. So they very politely asked Knockdu to rename their distillery on their bottle, or at least change the labeling. And, their lawyers agreed. So there you go. The name changed from Knockdu, which meant Black Hill, over to anCnoc, which means the hill in Scottish Gaelic. So not a huge change, but just interesting how that world works. The Knockdu distillery is double-faceted in the way that they produce both light, florally, and fruity and delicious whiskeys, but then over here they also do peated and smoked and dark and brooding and also delicious whiskeys. So they have things like their age statements. They have the 12, the 18, the 24, and actually they just did a 16, as well as a bunch of limited releases as well that are all going to be like that florally, appley, fruit, whatever. But then you have the peated side, which are things like the cutter, the flotter, the rudder, and multiple others that are going to be peated and, kind of make an impression that way. So one of these days I'll go over one of those other peated ones. I actually have one, but it's almost out and the cork fell in. It's kind of maybe a little funky at this point. I don't really want to review that, but I'll pick up one of the other ones eventually. So this one right here, the 18, is, ex-bourbon barrels, of course, like every Scotch. But then you also have ex-sherry casks. Now, where this is a little bit different, they specifically use Spanish oak. Now, Spanish oak matters because Spanish oak is rare and it's expensive. Before 1986, a lot of Spanish oak was being used for any scotches that were being, finished or just making sherry in general. Just the barrels were Spanish oak. Nowadays, we ship over ex-bourbon barrels and we, squirt the thing with a fire hose of sherry, call it sherry finished, and then send it back to the US for whatever kind of, or Scotland, for whatever kind of finishing you're doing. It's not the same. So that's why Spanish oak matters. It does impart a different kind of flavor, and anCnoc springs for the extra cost because it matters. So let's go ahead and get into the nosing and the tasting of this because I've waited long enough. There are a lot of times on this show where getting through the history and getting through all the other stuff, it's fun. I like that part. It's a fun thing to do the research and teach you guys about. But sometimes I just have this absolutely delicious whiskey sitting right here, and it's a little hard to ignore. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a nose. All right, so initially you're getting sweet, very sweet, but then it kind of goes floral for me. Things like roses or gardenias. Think like a wedding, right? A lot of gardenias are usually at weddings, so kind of it's actually interesting. This whiskey might give a lot of people memories of their wedding day. And thinking about that, I had, what are those things called? Hydrangeas at our wedding. Not gardenias, but still, whatever. So we'll get back to the whiskey. Honey is prevalent here. Citric, specifically orange rather than lemon. Almost like an orange oil, or, a little sweeter than an orange oil. I'm going to say more like a blood orange. You're getting, typically, at least when I describe it that way, I think of an orange as having that citricness, and then a blood orange being a sweeter version of that. Although oranges themselves are sweet, if you ever try the two side by side, I think you'll see what I'm talking about. There's a distinct difference, and it's mostly in how sweet they are. So think of it that way. The nose on this is magnificent. It's beautiful. It comes right out of the bottle, a couple feet from you, and you're going to smell it, and it's going to make you happy. At least it makes me happy. So, cheers. Let's go into the tasting. Sorry, I'm taking my time with this one. I'm also remembering that I burnt the roof of my mouth earlier on a buffalo wing. So whiskey doesn't do well with the burnt mouth, but oh well. I can still get most of the flavors here. And I have my notes to lean back on. So right into the sherry influence here, but it's not as heavy as some sherries could really be. To that point I made earlier, I'm going to have one more sip here because I kind of just numbed my mouth. This is also my first sip of the night. So give me one more sip to kind of target this. Yeah, the sherry persists through the second sip, which is good. So you're getting things like strawberry, little bit of, for me, little apple, but then it goes more into lemon, more like a lemon zest. Let me see if I can describe this. So if you have just like a gala apple, something that's appley, but it's not sour, and you were to sprinkle some lemon zest on it so that every bite was crisp and light and a little lemony. Mix that with a little bit of sherry influence, a little bit more of that orange that I was talking about, although less sweet. And that's mostly what I'm getting. There's a drying sensation on the back of the tongue that is pretty good. But I will say the finish on this is not super long. I would kind of expect it to be, but most of the flavor is packed right at the front of, it's front loaded if you want to say it. You get it immediately, but the finish doesn't persist. So let's talk overall. I don't think it's terribly a secret that I really enjoy this whiskey. For me, Scotch finds its sweet spot right around 18 years. I can't think of any 18-year-old whiskey that I've had, Scotch specifically, that I haven't really enjoyed. Obviously, some of them do get better with age, and some 12s really make you wish that they were 18. But 18 for me is the sweet spot. So I'm just out of curiosity, what do you guys think is kind of like Scotch's sweet spot? Do you like something more like a 21-year-old? Do you like 15s? Do you like 12s? What do you like? For me, I really like this one. I took this, so I paid about $100 for this, maybe 110. I forget exactly, but it was right around $100. And I don't typically spend $100 on whiskey. I don't usually treat myself to anything that nice. So when I do, it's usually a decision. It's usually a decision that I make. Actually, sometimes I watch other whiskey tubers as well to see what they think. But in this case, there were no really good reviews that sold me on it. I was sold by the idea that I was going to be doing this live stream with Nick Taylor. So I bought it anyway on his recommendation, and thankfully it was a good one. I did not regret whatsoever spending the money on this. I've shared this with friends. My friends all loved it. People that are both whiskey drinkers and not whiskey drinkers. That's part of the reason this bottle is so far gone, and part of the reason I really had to review this, because I want to finish this bottle myself. This is worth your $100. I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that often. This is worth your $100. You should go buy this bottle. All right, cool. So, quick thing. Whiskey dictionaries are back in stock. I placed another order for these. These are awesome. They kind of give you, I'll put the video up there because it'll do a much better job describing. But essentially, it's a way to track your whiskey. It'll help you to refine your nosing and tasting notes, and it'll really get you to stop and think about your whiskey. And it fits in your pocket, so you could bring it somewhere if you wanted to go to a whiskey tasting, for example. But I won't harp too much on that. So check it out. It's in the store, and they're back in stock. I know a lot of you were asking because they sold out pretty quick. So, all right, thank you very much for joining me here on the Whiskey Dictionary. And next time, when we do a review, we're going to be doing the Balvenie Doublewood 12. So if you want to go buy a bottle, or if you want to wait to see what my decision is on it, then know it's coming. All right, have a great rest of your night. Cheers.